Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today was the 1st of November and in Belgium that means one thing only, the quote-unquote real start of the cyclocross season. So this is the third real start. We had Molenbeek and then we had Ruddervoorde and now we have the Koppenberg. So clearly we are underway now because the third time is the lucky charm. And with me here to discuss it this year is Issam. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me.
We will dive right into the action because the Koppenberg, the Bult van Melden, was in prime conditions for a cyclocross race. It had rained quite a lot this week and the junior races tore up the course. It was muddy. The new technical features they added in the downhill last year didn't really pay off back then because the course was a lot drier, but this year in the mud it was cyclocross at its very best. Even though in the men's race the eventual competition wasn't that big, the suspense wasn't that high for the win, I still thoroughly enjoyed watching the riders go around on this course. You could see them battling the conditions. It was super slick, and that was certainly not an easy condition to start your season in. Nevertheless, Thibau Nys didn't really have all too many problems. He had a good start. He went into the field 5th. It was actually Wout Janssens from Cyclus who had the head start, but he would quickly fall back. Nys went into the pits and was around 10th place when he came out, and that was around some of the other riders we'd seen this season. Back there was also Michael van Toerenhout and Joris Nieuwenhuis. Those two riders would not feature at all in the race. Van Toerenhout had a real jour sans and turned left at the start of the cobbled climb at some point. It's probably 20 minutes into the race and abandoned, saving his legs for tomorrow. Nieuwenhuis did continue to the end, but this is not a good course for him and he finished somewhere in the lower end of the top 10. Nys, while he was back there, he knew that he couldn't wait back there too long. He made a move halfway through the first lap in the downhill, made a bunch of overtakes, quickly stormed to the front. And quite soon he rode away at the front together with Cameron Mason. Mason too made a charge up, passing for instance Toonaerts, who crashed on the diagonal of Camber in the first lap. Mason did his best to try and follow Nys, but there really was no stopping the young Nys. The European champion, who is up for title defense next week, powered away just before halfway through the race on the Koppenberg. His technical display was on point. He went on to take the win ahead of Cameron Mason, with Pim Ronhaar finishing third. He was in a bit of a no man's land for the entirety of the race. Well then, Issam, Thibau Nys, he started his season really well. I did not expect him to be this good. If you would have asked me pre-race, I would have gone with Michael van Toerenhout as race winner. And then probably Pim Ronhaar fighting Thibau Nys, with Nys eventually getting the upper hand for second place. That's what I wrote down on my note sheet this morning. But clearly, Van Toerenhout had a massive jour sans. He was not anywhere near there. And above all, Thibau Nys impressed me today. His display was good. The way he was riding for a first race, like I said, not easy conditions, but he rode with confidence, sending it down the downhills. But really, above all, what made the difference today was just his powerful display. His running looked good, his power output looked really good, and he delivered.
He definitely delivered. I mean, it was truly enjoyable to watch. He was very comfortable on the bike, never panicked. He wasn't immediately at the front from the start, but he just picked his way through, was able to cut through the course nicely and got to the front. Never really felt the need to go crazy. He was able to put Mason under pressure, but he was really also focusing on his own race, and that's basically what you have to do on these type of courses, which you don't really get at all, to be honest. But it is, it was very surprising in a way, the difference and the way he was racing, because I think that I somewhat thought that he would be able to fight for a podium. Like for me, it was somewhat, he might make it, he might not make it. The way he was racing today was with a lot of confidence, super powerful. Technically was also very comfortable. It was good. He managed it quite well. But overall, he was just able to continue on pushing, and that is somewhat a dream start of his season. And I'm just very curious what this now will tell us in terms of what will happen now in the next coming races and what the difference will be between him and the other competitors.
I didn't doubt his physical abilities coming in, but we've seen that Nys, especially in the past, was quite prone to technical mistakes, and that could have played a factor here, especially in these conditions, but that clearly wasn't the case, and last week I was kind of laughing at the kind of narrative that came from Overijssel. There were a few stories in Belgian papers about that a training video of Thibau Nys was the talk of the town in the pit zone because they saw him training through the rain, and there was this video from the car behind him with the windshield wipers going crazy because it was quite heavy rain there, and it kind of seemed a bit laughable to me because it's not that big of a deal that somebody trains in the rain to me, but clearly the impression that he would be ready for the season was right. He said he trained for dominance, Issam. He said, I don't train to win, I train to dominate the season, and I mean, it's very dangerous to draw the conclusions from this race because tomorrow in Lokeren will show a lot more different type of course, very technical as well, but we might be in for a season of Thibau Nys' greatness, although he himself was already being a bit cautious. I don't know, Lokeren tomorrow, double weekend is hard to start your season with. Next week, European Championships, I'm not that good in the sand yet, so I also want to be very cautious, but what I saw today looked very good.
It's hard to be cautious with his performance today. I think he is within his right to do so. I wouldn't see that as like trying to really downtalk his performance overall, because it's just very hard to put in perspective, especially with tomorrow and also the European Championships. That's just, it's a different story, and it's just hard to judge what it all means. But if you just look at his form right now, it just indicates something. It means that he started his season well. He is on a roll currently. It looks very good, and it's hard to judge, as I said before, but I think that it's looking very good. It's a good start, and we have to wait and see for confirmation in terms of how it will be in the next coming races, and when it gets tougher, or when it's not get tougher, but when we get a different type of race. And Koppenberg is just so atypical. It's hard to, as I said, replicate. And yeah, that's basically how I stand in on it. I think that it is hard to say what it all means, but don't be surprised if it means something.
Then Cameron Mason, Issam, because second place is really good and really promising. This is the Mason that we saw 2 years ago. Remember, at this time of the year, Cameron Mason really seemed destined. We were on this podcast saying, it's only a matter of time before he's going to get it. He was good on the Koppenberg, just missed that little bit. He made that charge in Pontchâteau, nearly clinching the title, but came up to the front just that little bit too late there. We saw him in Boom also fighting. I think that was the last edition of that race. Really, really battling it out with Nieuwenhuis, who was then also having a bit of a comeback season on Balois Trek. But now he does seem well and truly back. He gave in the interview afterwards some interesting words there towards it. He said he made a lot of changes to the people in his surrounding. He said the only way performance increases is by making changes myself. He said he decided to add a lot of muscle so he could be more powerful. I thought it was really telling, and this is the Mason we saw 2 years ago. The encouraging signs were there, and now he also adds that with a good result.
Absolutely, and I think the performance of Nys was impressive, but I feel that the performance of Mason is also very notable and impressive from his side as well. And I hope that he can be consistent at the front, and that he is able, you're not going to get this type of course every day, but I just hope that he is able to continue and be up front and race for top fives, podiums, and who knows, maybe even race victory when it all fits. I think that it was from his side also a very strong race, and he was able to keep Nys on his toes a little bit, and that was nice to see. And he changed the right things, it seems to be that way. And as I said, hopefully he can keep it consistent now and don't have those huge dips where it's just questioning if it's actually Mason that is racing or someone else. And I hope that we don't see that this season, and that he's able to continue on with the good form and the good legs.
Certainly, and what's also encouraging is that this year those starts are finally really seeming to be going well for him. So I think we can expect some more performances from him. He's seemingly getting into a groove. The results are on the up. He jumped onto your mountain last week, and perhaps he will jump even higher after this, but we will save that for the actual power rankings episode. Third place, Pim Ronhaar, I really don't have that much to say. In the summary, I said he was in a bit of a no man's land, and I think that is kind of the way to describe his race. It's solid, it's what we would have expected from him, so I suggest we look at the entire top 10. Behind Nys, Mason and Ronhaar, we had Victor van der Putten ahead of Toon Aerts. Lars van der Haar in 6th place ahead of Gerben Kuipers, Joris Nieuwenhuis, Niels van der Putten and Wietse Meeuwse. Few riders that do stand out here. Issam, first of all, the Deeschacht Hens duo of Victor van der Putten and Toon Aerts. Where for Victor van der Putten, this is a great result. This is a course that suits him very well. When I interviewed him for our Substack, he said this was the race of the year he looked forward to. Great performance. He won here in the U23 category. At the same time, for Aerts, this is a disappointment. A former winner here. He had that crash early on, but never really seemed to settle into the groove afterwards. The contrast between these two teammates couldn't have been bigger today.
It's a huge shame for Aerts, because I think that this was one of those races that you look at and be like, I wouldn't say a certainty that he will end up on the podium, but this is one of these races that he should be up there, and he wasn't. I think that the crash didn't help, but certainly it also seems to be that way that he didn't have the legs to play a role up front, and he was able to somewhat save the day, but it wasn't all too great, and he was suffering. And for Van der Putten, for Victor van der Putten, it seemed like he was enjoying himself somewhat for how much you actually can enjoy yourself on the Koppenberg, because it's all misery and fatigue that goes through your body in a way. But I think that he will look at this race very positively. It was hard today to get on the podium, but I think that nevertheless for him it was a very solid outing, and that's what you kind of have to do when you get these races presented. Those are opportunities, and they don't always present themselves, and he took use of it. There were certain riders that didn't have their day, and he definitely benefited from that as well, I think. But that's how it goes. That's how racing goes, and that's especially how racing goes on the Koppenberg.
That brings me to last year's winner, Lars van der Haar. He announced his retirement from the sport this week. He will retire at the end of this season. He said he's been struggling with motivation after last year, that during the road season he couldn't really get himself to complete his training rides, that he was quitting like halfway through 3-hour rides. During a few road races at the end, he found himself crying alongside the course because he really didn't enjoy it anymore. He refound his spark, kind of reloaded himself for one more season, and then you can only conclude that that is a logical decision to make, Issam, and what a career he can look back on, and we will have plenty of time to discuss that as the season draws to an end. But really a phenomenal rider with a phenomenal legacy he will leave behind. One of the first riders that really inspired me when I was a young cyclocross racer was him. In Louisville, I recall very well that he got onto the podium there. I couldn't believe it. I woke up the next morning to those results to rewatch the race, and it was great. And he gave a clinic here around the corner a year later. That was kind of my sort of connection to Van der Haar, and now his career comes to an end. What a rider and what a career.
It is somewhat also a wise decision when you're feeling that that spark is not really there, and you're feeling that you're nearing your end of your career. It's sometimes hard to make such a decision because you just you're in love with the sport, you love the sport so much, and to decide to separate from it and go another way is a hard decision. But I think that he gave a lot to the sport. He was, for me personally, was somewhat a rider that on the men's side, the Dutch riders were not that impressive at the time when he started to emerge, and he was able to save the day, I guess, and he was an incredible talent. He was someone that searched through the ranks, was able to have some incredible results overall, and we can definitely discuss that another time because he has definitely some notable results and quite a career. these decisions at the end of a career have to be made, and I'm happy for him that he has been able to do that. And maybe that's going to be some motivation to end the season with maybe a victory or try to have some good results. So yeah, it's good for him, and hopefully he can find the next phase of his life and career with ease, and something that is pleasant for him and he can find joy in.
Then I think there are a few other riders that should be mentioned. Jente Michels was on for a good ride until he had chain problems. Emil Verstringen was kind of up there until he too had a problem. Verstringen DNF'd from the race while Michels continued to finish 14th. Van Toerenhout, as said, had the Jour Sans and DNF'd. Kamp didn't really feel it either. Orts didn't feel it, all leaving the race. I think today is kind of telling for why normally when the Koppenberg is midweek, so many riders have opted to skip the race. The European Championships were always a convenient excuse, right? Like, oh, that's an upcoming event, I want to save the legs. But you really see now that they don't all like the Koppenberg. And a rider like Wiesure, for instance, this is not a course for him at all. Finishes in 13th. Van der Bos 12th. Same for him. Both didn't enjoy their day out there at all. Niels van der Putten suffered all the way. Finishes 9th in the end. So that's kind of telling for the Koppenberg and explains why so many riders typically skip this race. One thing I will say is regarding the overall. We know Thibau Nys is not going to finish this classification, and with that, Cameron Mason has actually done a great job so far. He has a lead which expands 1 minute 30 already over Ronhaar, so that could be an interesting dynamic for the upcoming season. Can Ronhaar catch Mason? There are certainly a few courses that will suit Mason a lot. Take, for instance, Brussels at the end of the year. Take Baal. Muddy Loenhout is also a race where Mason should be able to perform well. So let's keep an eye on that. We might, for once, have an entertaining X2O battle on our hands. That brings us to the women's race then, because there the story of the first lap really was Fem van Empel. The world champion came into the pits at the first pit zone, changed bikes, was kind of back there around 4th, 5th place, needed to move up a little bit, made a mistake, and then she kind of fell a bit further back, went into the pits and left the race. It was eventually communicated by the team that, of course, last week she skipped the race in Overijse. It was a bit more of an illness than that they communicated before the race today. She said she didn't feel fit and decided to leave the race. It's unknown if she will start the race tomorrow, and they are not sure what it means for the European Championships next week. So far about Van Empel. Without her, there was just one of the big two left, and that was Lucinda Brandt. Brandt, too, didn't really have a fantastic getaway after going into the pits early on, but eventually found her way to the front, and a battle unfolded with not necessarily a name that many people already expected. Celia Gery, the reigning Road U23 World Champion, a rider who performed fantastically last year, the U23 Cyclocross European Champion. She was the one who was the most aggressive, because in the second lap, when Brandt took the front and the other riders, Foucounet for instance, Clauzel, Casasola, all started falling back, Gery was the only one able to stay close to Brandt. A number of great technical passages helped Gery stay in the wheel of Brandt. Brandt was stronger in the climbing sections and opened a 15-second gap towards the end of the second lap, but that gap remained there. It seemed like Brandt was not necessarily cruising towards the win, but at least had a margin big enough to take the win. But then in the final lap, Gery chained together a phenomenal downhill. From the first pit, the highest point of the course, she completely sent it down there, and her 18-second deficit was reduced to a 4-second deficit. Brandt kind of seemed surprised by it, but had something left on the uphill sections, drew away a little bit more of a gap. The gap went to 6 seconds, and then in the final corner before turning onto the cobbles, Gery was blocked by a back marker, which meant the definite end of her hopes of taking the win. Brandt came home to take the win ahead of Gery. Behind, Casasola recovered from a crash in the first lap, overtaking Helene Clauzel and fending her off to finish third. Still no duel, Issam. I was so stoked to see Brandt go head-to-head with Van Empel. But it didn't happen. Nevertheless, for the standards of the Koppenbergcross, a really close race between Brandt and Gery. Brandt takes the win. It's her third win in 4 races. But I can't really help but notice that it doesn't seem as spectacular this year.
It's a bit weird to say, but I agree with you. I think that it is, today Brandt made it herself maybe also a little bit difficult, but overall this season she has been strong and had strong moments. Normally Brandt should be able to break away a little bit earlier or put them under pressure for several laps, but now it has been a little bit different, and it's almost like, she's beatable against riders that she normally shouldn't be looking beatable, if you know what I mean. It's like, it's not a bad thing because she's still able to get those results, but it is interesting. And it also, if you look at the race of today, I think that, Gery today, she definitely on a roll. Incredible race. Surprised me that she was able to bring that battle that she definitely didn't need to, because we were all thinking about that battle between Van Empel and Brandt, which seemed at this point, I can only say cursed at the moment. But there was Gery, and Gery saved the day, because otherwise it was going to be a solo for Brandt, and it showed some holes in the game of Brandt currently, and it's, we know that she seems to have priorities that are not only extending into dominating a season and being on the podium every race and having that. She also has goals in terms of championships, and she wants to be good at them, and especially the World Championship, and maybe that plays a role. But I think that if you look at the race of Brandt, it was good, but it could be better, and that is somewhat the idea that I have with the races of Brandt so far. It's good, but it can be better. It's early in the season, so you don't know how she is trying to get through that season in terms of form. But I definitely see what you mean, and that is how I kind of look at the way Brandt has been performing so far.
It could indeed be the case that this is what she wants, because she did give an interview, I think, about a week ago now, that she wanted to do fewer races than last year. Last year she raced almost everything. She was just happy that she could do a full season again. That didn't happen the 2 seasons before. She was eager to be out there and eager to try and win the classification. She didn't start the season believing she could win the world title. That realization only sunk in during the Christmas period. That's why she skipped the national championships relatively last minute to focus on that race in Louvain. She didn't win the title, but this year she really wants to win that title. She knows there's not 10 more opportunities for her. So it could be that this year the seasonal approach is different, and we will only see Lucinda Brandt really reach her best that one weekend in January, the last weekend of January. So that could be a dynamic and could play into why she's not as good this time. Many people emailed me last week and reached out or placed a comment that they disagreed with my take that Casasola was inferior to Brandt last week in Overijs. And it's nice that people have other opinions. And I won't use today's race to kind of prove a point, because today's course condition was different and the type of course was very different as well. But the point that they were making was that Brandt didn't seem as spectacular as last year, and I have to agree with that note that was made. Today, you pointed out, Issam, in your point just now, that there were some weaknesses in the overall skill set of Brandt, but I would argue that at the same time it also very much highlighted the skills of Gery, because if we look at the few top riders, if we look at the climbs, that's not that interesting. It's just the power, and Brandt clearly was better than Gery there. Casasola analyzed that her technical capabilities today hampered her uphill abilities, because technical mistakes or being inferior technically can eventually lead to struggling uphill. It just means that you need to put in more acceleration as you become fatigued earlier. But look at the downhills. That's where you could clearly see that Gery was the strongest out of the top 3, out of anybody. And I might even go as far as say that Gery is already one of the top 3 technical riders out there. Take, for instance, this section just before the second pit zone. There was this yellow section alongside of Renault Trap that had a big inflatable there. They had these super sharp corners. Then you had a swooping right-hander, another 90-degree right up a climb, which was running. But if you looked at Gery, the way that she took the lines, it was much smoother. She was able to keep much more momentum. Brandt was able to take the first corner at relatively high speed, but her exit was quite bad, and that cost her all the way through. 4 turns later, she needed to dismount before the climb and run. Gery at a number of times was able to ride a wide line, but because she carried so much speed through that technical downhill section, she had a lot more speed that allowed her to even launch up that climb. That wasn't the case for the others. Casasola struggled a lot with that downhill section there as well. At one time I saw her come down on her top tube rather than her seat. So Casasola looks more confident on the bike. That's my take. She, on that off-camber downhill, her corner onto it, the cornering ability itself, was not that good. But her confidence seems much better and she seems to be much more in control of her bike, which is a big up. Brandt, we know, is crazy on those sections, but doesn't still always have the skills to back it up with. You saw that in the final lap. There was a bit of pressure coming and she made a little mistake and that cost her a few seconds. And then you had Gery, who is the full package. She has the confidence and the bike handling skills. On that off-camber diagonal in the final lap, she made a mistake, or maybe that was in the penultimate lap. But instead of losing speed, she gained speed. With one foot clipped in, she pedaled 3-4 more times and kept going. So while Gery didn't have the power yet to compete with Brandt, her technical performance today was phenomenal, and the course conditions kind of played to that, which is why I won't use today's race to kind of back my point or back anybody's point of Overijssel last week, because that was a totally different race.
Definitely highlighted that Gery can do things on the bike on this course that others were not really able to do. It was incredible to see as well that she started to believe in it on the last lap and really, gave it her all. It's obviously those type of efforts on the last lap are just, I would say, it will eventually cost you because you won't have enough at the end of it. But it was still very commendable that she was able to do it. She was believing in winning the race, Well, before the start of it, probably I wouldn't even say that the podium was possible, but there she was, and I think that it was incredible to see. And with Brandt, I didn't really. It is what you say. She can really be good in certain sections, but it's just when it gets really, really technical, at times she just kind of lacks a little bit, and it becomes so much more highlighted when you compare it, for example, to someone like Gery, who is just has it all at the moment. And I think that what Casasola said about her race in the end was also, I like the way how she analyzed it, in the sense of the feeling was good. I was making too many mistakes. The feeling was not so good. Just the efforts that I had to do because of the fact that I was technically just a little behind on the two women in front. It costed me, and then I had to settle for third. And that was kind of how it went. And these type of courses, you're not going to get throughout the season. It's only this race, and you can maybe see in Namur some similarities, but it's so different, this race. And also during a time of a season where you are more used, I guess, to the faster races. So it's just overall, it's a weird race, but a beautiful race. And definitely one that when you look at it, it's just, you really have this feeling of crosses back, crosses here. It fills me with a lot of joy when I see it on my screen, at least for me.
Certainly a massive overperformance by Gery. I didn't expect this either. I mean, I gave my pre-race prediction for the men's race. For the women's race, I wrote down this morning Van Empel, Brandt, Casasola. And then after that, I still even didn't consider Gery. I was curious to see what she can do, but I thought, if she can finish 5th, that would be a great performance, right? But this was really, really impressive. And I've been on record here, I think 3 episodes ago, that I thought Gery was the biggest talent in the women's category coming up. And still, despite that, despite my faith in her, I didn't expect this. So it was really phenomenal to see. If you look about what you said about Casasola, I think just one more thing to add to that. Her team manager, Chris Wouters, the sporting coach there, he said during the race that Casasola, after that crash in the first lap, was kind of too eager to come back, and that's why she kind of stacked these small mistakes, and that eventually cost her too much. He probably saw more of it from where he was than what we could see on the TV, but that's just a bit of perspective I wanted to add. And Issam, she was in contention with Hélène Clauzel for quite a while, and also that I would say was relatively surprising, because Clauzel, she's not a rider that we've seen do tremendously well on these climbing courses. Namur, Overijse, she was up there, but even if we put it off against the riders that she was up against today, it was a performance for Clauzel which was also punching above her weight.
I think confirming in a way how the way she has been going so far this season, that it is good form. that's a good thing. And we didn't see all that much footage of that battle, because a lot of focus was of course on first and second, and which is not a weird thing. But yeah, it was definitely for her, if you look from that perspective, it was definitely a very strong outing. And Clauzel has been going well so far this season, and it's great that it seems that she found the support and the backing for this season, and maybe even beyond. And I think that also kind of helps with a rider, but that is not the reason why she has been performing that good, because she has been starting this season from the get-go, have been pretty good, and she has been able to have some solid results and also show herself. And I think that is also important. And when you're in such a situation, and yeah, I think definitely if you look at the course like Koppenberg, if you would say beforehand, you don't really say this is a Clauzel course, but she held her own pretty well.
Let's look at the entire top 10 then, because we had Branchery, Casasola and Clauzel in the top 4. Then Inger van der Heijden in 5th on a course that didn't suit her. Amandine Muller in 6th place ahead of Kiona Krabbe, Amandine Foucounet, Manon Bakker in 9th and Denise Betsema in 10th. Issam, vive la France. Quel résultat pour la France aujourd'hui. What a performance for the French. I mean, 4 riders in the top 10. Albin Sparvel wins the men's under-23 race. They had nearly a rider placing in the top 10 in the men elite. Theo Thomas was fighting way up there. It was really a great day out for the French overall, and Amandine Muller in 6th place is another young rider on the AS-Bike team. We discussed her briefly last season when we mentioned that she made quite some progression, but even considering that, this was still a overperformance for her as well. I didn't see this coming for her either, and it's a great result for the French all across the board today.
It's a day filled with surprises, I guess. Huh? So it's that was also a very strong result. I mean, she has been her season start was not bad. Coupe de France was also solid results there. So if you look at that, definitely wasn't thinking that this was possible. And but again, a race like this on the Koppenberg is just, once you are out of rhythm, once the motivation is gone, once you feel completely empty, this is not the course where you want to have those feelings, because on other courses at times you can somewhat compensate a bad feeling because the pace drops or because of something, you get back in the race, you can find momentum again and you can maybe save a little bit, and then on the last lap you can somewhat compensate those bad legs. But Koppenberg, you're not able to do that. It's just you have it or you don't, and if it's goodbye on lap 3, it's goodbye on lap 3, and you're barely going to be able to recover that on the last lap on the women's side, and the other laps on the men's side. It's just difficult to do. So that also somewhat helps if you have good form to have a better result than you might have had on a different course. It puts you in a position where you might not really end up, and I think that for someone like Muller, that's definitely a very solid result. And she's a talent. She's not the talent that Gery is, but she is someone that also is growing at her own pace, and you don't know where that will end up. So it's definitely great to see, and the French riders were definitely doing their best to be up there at the front, and they had a good day for sure.
I just find the contrast quite interesting between the way that some of these riders approach their seasons, right? So if you look at Gery and Muller, these are both riders on the road. They both raced the Tour de l'Avenir. Gery winning 3 stages. She's with FDG. Muller is with, I believe, AG Insurance, and she might be on their Devo team, but that I'm not 100% sure about. But regardless, like, these are riders that have had their season. They're coming into cross. We see Blanca Vache now racing as well. She is on their honeymoon trip, and what better way to do that than racing some cross? She's not training. Today was not a good outing, but I would not say it worries me in any way. And they have a plan. They have a seasonal approach. They know these ways to go about it. I saw Marie Schreiber's on the start list for the European Championships. That would surprise me because it would be her first race of the season unless she's racing somewhere outside of Belgium tomorrow. Zoe Baxet was going to start her season quite soon, but she had a nasty crash on the road. But the point I was getting to is if you look at the way that these riders have their season planned, or that some of the mountain bikers kind of jump immediately to cross, there's just a big contrast, which I think you can see between the riders that do these year-round efforts or their activities, or at least kind of these mountain bikers that take on cross or add road to it, whereas I feel that sometimes there's a lot of kind of overemphasis in some countries on early specialization, where I can hear in the junior category that there's riders that are, oh no, I'm only going to do like 4 or 5 cross races at home. I don't really want to go to the World Cups because I want to focus on mountain biking. No, I don't want to do road because I want to focus on mountain biking. No, I don't want to do road because I'm going to fully focus on cyclocross. And I think either of those approaches are kind of not the way to go. I feel that it's fine, right? Like, you don't need to always combine road with cross, but I feel that you always need to combine cross with some degree of road racing, because none of these riders at the top here has not done a road program this year, and it all helps them get a bigger engine. It all helps them become stronger. Look on the mountain bike where Hatherley is on Jaco Alula and is the reigning 2-time world champion. Like, it's just a must. So that's just an overall point I had looking at Gery and Muller, who both had tremendous outings today. To not make this point too long, Issam, you're free to respond to it, but else maybe you want to talk about a rider like Kiona Krabbe or Amandine Foucounet or Norbert Ribeiro.
Don't really have that much to say on that, other than I think that it is interesting to see that that the preparations have differentiated so much due to, you know, either the planning in terms of, because you're multidisciplinary, the road and whatnot, but also because of circumstances outside of it that play a role. And it seems to be that way, that it is more than it has ever been, which makes it, I guess, also a little hard to judge the results that we are seeing right now, because not only you have to make sure that you take into account that it is early season, but you also have to take into account that you're missing certain riders, that certain riders just didn't have the preparation that others have or had, and that just also plays a role into how we have to view these races in a way. And I feel, at least it's a feeling, but I feel that it has been this year more than it has ever been, and that might be, you know, it's very subjective. It's not a fact. I'm not trying to present it as one, at least. But yeah, that's how I look at it. And yeah, I think Krabbe definitely had a very strong race. I think that was a strong ride. But Ribeiro, I don't know what she was doing. I think that Ribeiro had just her usual in terms of a race. It was just always, you know, she was in trouble. Didn't really get through that course quite well, because it is not really a course that suits her. But nevertheless, it was just not a good race. And if she had any ambitions of the X2O trophy classification, you know, she could have probably be better off not starting, because she's with the 5 minutes that she normally would have if she didn't start.
Some final words. I think that You make some fair points about those riders. I just want to say that with this performance of Gery, we might have a great battle on our hands next week together with Leni Bentveld for the title. Muller can certainly dream about a podium in the U23 women's category as well. Regarding men U23, Sparvel and Vietzi beat Kai de Bruikere today, so that could also be interesting. But Jordi Corses, podium finisher last week, of course, and Heerde will have a word as well. We will have more on the preview later this week. For now, I give you some remaining results. There was the fourth round of the HFS System Cup in Jičín, Czech Republic. Václav Jezek beating Michal Boros again, with Marek Konva coming third. Barbora Bukovska won the women elite race ahead of Katerina Hladíková and Lucy Grohova. In Spain, there was the third round of the Copa de España in Amorillo, with Kevin Suárez Fernández beating González Iguazu Macho, with Unax Galan Cortezar finishing third. The women's podium went as following: Lucia González Blanco ahead of Sofia Rodriguez Revere and Anne Morichon. I think that will be it for the Koppenbergcross, Issam. I thoroughly enjoyed this edition, a lot more than the last edition, so that was a great positive. A non-negative start to the X2O trophy. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no worries. I enjoyed it myself as well. It was a great race to watch, and we had something to talk about, so it was fun being on again.
We are back tomorrow, then we will discuss the second round of the X2O trophy already in Lokeren. Catch you guys soon. Goodbye.